we're seeing here a series of sevens. Here, in the current cycle of seven, the author is discussing the 7 things which are prerequisites for tshuva. And the first one that we got through was that a person has to know that there is what needs to be corrected in order to correct it. And so that was the first thing. To reckon one's deeds in order to determine what's right and what's wrong. And one of the points that we made, of course, is that one of the major factors for tshuva is learning Torah. Not only because the Torah purifies a person, and not only because the Torah has a positive effect on correcting a person's ways, but it also gives the person the knowledge he needs to know in order to recognize and discern what's right, what's wrong, what should be done, what shouldn't be done, such that if anything has been done which is not correct, the person can do tshuva on that. So that was the first prerequisite. The second one is on page Kuf Tzadi Aleph. Hasheni. Even a person is aware of averos that he's done, lo yishareta lehem im lo yada b'vadai ra'asa averos shavar. He won't properly regret having done them if he doesn't know the severity of what he's done and what he's transgressed. Kim yachshov ma b'kach nesim min olam hazeh b'lo bracha. What's the big deal if I derive benefit from this world without making a bracha? I mean, what's the big deal if I make a bracha? Okay, when I remember, I make a bracha. If I know the bracha, I'll make it. If I don't know it, I won't make it. If I don't remember, I won't make it. So what? It's a big deal. If that's his attitude, then of course he's not going to be able to do tshuva properly because he doesn't recognize the severity of not doing what he was supposed to be doing. Oim betalti min Torah, or if I had the opportunity to learn and I just wasted my time and didn't do that, so there are other things which are important. It's not like I killed anybody. He won't have remorse and he won't do tshuva with a full heart because he doesn't take seriously what he has done wrong or what he has not done right. Rather, the person has to think, there's nothing worse than not considering important the commandments of the king. It's a kal v'chomer mimelech basar v'dam. Clearly, if a person transgresses the command of a king, even if it's a very small command, it would be considered to be very serious. There might be scenarios where he could be put to death just for disobeying the king's rule over something quite small. All the more so, a person should take very seriously even things which seem non-important, but when they're coming from the command of the King of Kings, Hashem. And therefore, the second thing is to not only recognize the wrong, but to appreciate the severity of it as well. Hashlishi, at the bottom of the page, a person who transgresses has to know to the depth of his heart that there is retribution and punishment exacted from a person who transgresses. If he does not know this, then he will not be moved to do tshuva, because he says, okay, I know it was wrong, and I even know it's severe, but so what? Who's going to punish me? What's going to happen to me? Yeah? But if he knows that he will be held accountable for what he's done wrong, that will also be in his service an impetus for him to do tshuva. But once a person becomes aware of and accepts the fact that there is punishment and there is retribution, there are ramifications for the things that he's done wrong, Az Yashuv Yischaret, then he will feel remorse for what he's done. Vivakesh me'ezakel me'ulal mechila, then he will ask from the praiseworthy God forgiveness. It says, Samar mipachtecha besari umi mishpatecha yoresi. My flesh became goose-pimpled because of the fear of your statutes, and meaning the fear of not having fulfilled them. The fourth one, a person who transgresses should know all of the transgressions that he ever did for the days of his life, whether they're large or small, and all of the words, the meaningless things that he said, mikoton vad godol, whether they are small nature or of larger importance, hakol kesuvim b'sefer, it's all recorded. Vein shichacha lifnei Hashem yisalei, and if we talk about forgetfulness, there's none of that by God. Dichsiv, halohu kamus imodi, chosum botzrosai. Behold, these transgressions of yours, they are hidden by me, and they are sealed in my storage chamber. V'omer, and furthermore the verse says, B'yad kol adam yachtoim, that a person's transgressions are sealed and signed by his own hand. He's forced to testify and admit he has done this. Ki im yachshav sheyesh shichach lavanosav, he thinks, it's true, I've done it, but who's going to remember? Let's just sweep it under the carpet as if it never had existed. Lo yischared v'livakesh mimeno aleim mechila, he won't feel remorse, he won't do tshuva on them, he won't ask forgiveness for them, because he says, they're not going to be remembered. Ki rabim choshvim, many people think, because God kind of delays in making us accountable for transgressions. They think he forgot, he let it slide. He's not going to make a big issue out of it. And as a result, they'll be forgotten and they won't be brought against him. As it says, since God does not bring a person to be accountable for his deeds very quickly, so people use that as a reason to go ahead and do evil. And therefore a person has to recognize that not only he has to consider what he's done wrong, the severity of what he's done wrong, the fact that he'll be accountable for it, and even if he's temporarily not being held accountable for it, it's only in God's mercy to give the person a chance to do tshuva. And he shouldn't think that the very thing that was intended for his benefit is an indication that the transgressions were forgotten, therefore he doesn't have to do tshuva. On the contrary, he should have been zapped on the spot. And God in his great mercy cut him slack to give an opportunity to do tshuva. And this chutzpahdik person uses that slack as an indication that God is not going to hold him accountable for it, rather than doing tshuva. Therefore, that's going to prevent him from doing tshuva. God does not want to punish a person to be spiteful. God says, as it says in the verse, I'd much rather not punish the person and let him do tshuva. Let him do tshuva and live. Lo chafetz b'moser rasha ele b'shuva. God doesn't desire the death of the wicked person, rather he wants his tshuva and let him live. So that's why God withholds punishing right away. He'd rather the person do tshuva and come about on his own without punishment.
People like to test that.
Yeah.
Really up there.
Yeah.
I might try something.
So such a person is adding. He's just adding more measure to his accountability, and at some point it's going to come rolling over. The fifth thing, person should know that tshuva is like a remedy to transgressions. A sick person who doesn't believe in the remedies they're applying to him, so that it will cure him. He won't be particularly assiduous in taking this medicine. But when he knows for sure the result of the medication, certainly he'll take it. He'll actually ask for the bitter medicine because he has faith and trust that it'll cure him. So a person should know the certain value of tshuva, the curative powers of tshuva. Then he'll desire to tshuva. He won't push it off, taking it not seriously. On the contrary, he'll be interested in doing tshuva, even if it's difficult, because he knows that it's going to be good for him. He's ready to swallow the bitter medicine. The sixth, he should recall the goodness that God has done for him for all of his days. And he should be thankful for these good deeds. And this he didn't do by transgressing. And he has to consider the way out, the punishment of the transgression against the pleasure of doing it. And on the other hand, he should weigh out the difficulty of performing the mitzvah, the reward for the mitzvah, as opposed to the difficulty in performing it. So clearly, more often than not, if a person's thinking clearly, he'll realize that the punishment for this transgression is much worse and not worth, therefore, the pleasure of doing the transgression. Or the reward of the mitzvah is so great that it certainly outweighs any inconvenience of actually doing the mitzvah. So it simply behooves a person not to transgress and to proactively do the mitzvah. So the sages said, "Hevi mechashev hefsed mitzvah keneged schar," like it says in Pirkei Avos. You should reckon the loss of the mitzvah against its reward. What loss is there in doing a mitzvah? Time, money, cost, discomfort. Right? Of course, there are its costs. So what they're saying is weigh the cost out against the revenue, and there's a price you pay for doing a mitzvah, but the reward that you get is much greater than that. So it's just economics 101. You get more back than you expend, so it's a good deal. Schar avera keneged hefseda, and the reward of an avera you have to measure against its loss. What reward is there in doing an avera? Yeah, the fun, the pleasure. Well, we see we're speaking man of experience. Is that what you're suggesting? Yeah? Very good. You have to weigh that out against the reward. Yeah. Well, it's a good thing you came. Otherwise, we had no idea what reward could there possibly be in doing an avera. Yeah, very good. Hashvi, the seventh one. A person has to be prepared to undergo great difficulty in refraining from transgressing the things that he's used to doing. Because since he does it, he enjoys it, he gets addicted to it, refraining from it results in withdrawal symptoms. You have to be prepared to suffer the shakes in order to get out of that habit. Because it's clear, it's obvious that a transgression that a person's used to all of his days, it's like no big deal for him. He thinks it's even, as if it's permitted. It's hard for him to extirpate himself from it. Therefore, a person needs great effort, needs great protection to retract from things that he's gotten used to doing, which are wrong. He's got to have a full consensus in his heart, and in his soul, because the habit and the desire is going to draw him into doing it again and again and again. And he's got to be able to have a singular purpose, singularity of purpose and strength and fortitude to refrain from lapsing into that bad habit again. In order to uproot that evil from his heart as if he never had become accustomed to it. And he should get used to despising in his heart things which are evil. It says, rip upon your hearts and your clothing. When a transgressor fixes these 7 things on his heart, then certainly he's very close to the ways of tshuva. Number 1, because he knows what he's done wrong. Number 2, he recognizes the import of it. Number 3, he recognizes that he's going to be held accountable to it. Number 4, he considers that nothing is going to be forgotten. And number 5, he's got to think that it's actually good for him to subject himself to the program of tshuva, which is not easy, but it's going to be good for him, right? And number 6, right? You should weigh out, what is he really getting out of this transgression, or what is he really losing by not doing the mitzvah, or by doing the mitzvah, right? And the 7th one, he has to really make this singularity of purpose to take himself, uproot himself, extirpate himself from this habitual practice of transgressing. If a person has these 7 things in mind, then he's got what? Yeah. These are the ingredients of a proper tshuva. V'hine madregos rabois the tshuva. Now there are actually many levels of tshuva. Kuf Tzadi Gimel, 2nd paragraph. Lefi madregos is karav adam el Hashem yisalei, and according to the darga of the tshuva, he will get close to Hashem. Uloilam eina neshama tahira b'tahara shalema shu avonos kolo hayu ela achar shitayra adam es liboy. The purity of the soul is not a complete form of purity, except in the state when the transgressions are no longer, because he's done tshuva, he's purified his heart. Like a dirty garment. If he launders it just a bit, as yavor tinuf, the gross dirt will be removed. But the signs of the mango stains will still be remaining. But through washing very thoroughly and with some type of detergent, some type of Clorox or something, then he's going to get those mango stains fully out. And furthermore it says, much launder me from my transgressions. Herev is like Rav, Harbe. Herev kabseini ma'avani, right? Greatly launder me from my transgressions. Therefore you shall launder your heart from its transgression. It says, Kabasi mira'a libech Yerushalayim. Launder from evil your heart, Jerusalem. Yesh li lichtov lecha 20 inyanim shehen mi'ikar tshuva. I have now a list for you of 20 things, which are fundamental factors of tshuva. So now, in addition to the 30 things that you're supposed to mention twice daily, add 20 factors of tshuva. V'hine. The Rishon, Yitfos b'midas acharota. Person has to get hold of the attribute of remorse, regret. V'yosim el libo ki yesh oynesh gadol l'misha avar al mitzvah samelech gadol. There's great punishment for somebody who transgresses the great God. U'kamo she'amar kosov, as it says in the verse, Tanu laHashem elokechem kavod b'terem yichshich. Right? Give to your God before it gets dark, before a person's eyes are darkened, before he dies. Do tshuva before you die and day. Well, Rabbi, I'm not sure when I'm going to die. That's the point. You got to do tshuva every day because you may die tomorrow. When a person thinks of the days of darkness that will come to a person who transgresses against the God of Jacob, he has fear. He regrets his deeds. V'yomar believe when he says in his heart, Mei al Sisli, what have I done? How was the fear of God not before me? How could I have forgotten? Why did I do this? And why didn't I resin? Why did I not recoil from the rebuke that I received because of transgressing? And how is it that I lost control of myself just because of the enjoyment of one fleeting moment? How did I make tome and impure my pure soul? Asher nuf habib imkor kodesh, which was breathed into me from the source of holiness. V'chasisi chiluf oilam gadol v'oroich kayam le'ol me'ad b'oilam koton akolei. How did I transpose, reverse, put forth the great world before the small world? Ve'echlo zacharti yom hamaves, and how is it that I didn't remember the day of death? Asher lo yashir lifnei nishmasi biltig v'yasi v'admasi, which will not leave me with anything other than the soul, without a body in the ground. And he should increase these types of thoughts of remorse and regret. And this is what the prophet Yirmiyahu meant when he said, Ein ish nicham al ra'asoi lemor ma'asisi. Nobody feels remorse to say, what have I done? That's almost worse than doing it. Doing it is one thing, but not having any remorse afterwards for not having done it is a totally different thing. That's even worse, because a person can get caught up and embroiled in the emotions of the moment and forget temporarily Hashem and the mitzvos and loses perspective. But once things have cooled down and he's had his way, not to think, wow, how did I do that? Why did I do that? And feeling no remorse so that's even worse. When he's in the throes of his desires, it's bad enough to give sway to them, but he's in the throes of his desire, he loses control. But after he's calmed down, he still denies God and doesn't regret what he did wrong, and doesn't admit that he did anything wrong. In a way, that's even worse. Yeah. The denial might be based on wanting to justify himself, but he might just deny it because he doesn't care. That's even worse. It's just perfectly apathetic. And therefore, the first fundamental thing for tshuva is to regret. It's to think for a minute and realize, what did I do? How did I do that? How did I get there? Why? Why didn't I think? Why didn't I? So at least to stir up some feeling of regret. Hasheni aziv esachet. The second is to, after the regret, discard the transgression. Make up in one's mind that he's not going to do it again. Shiyasa v'choyte dochav arayim. I'm not going to do that again. Vigmar b'chol liboy shelo yosif levo b'derech hara oid. He makes up in his mind he's not going to go that way again. V'zei reishis tshuva. This is the beginning of tshuva. Lazoiv drochav v'machshavas arayim. To leave, depart from his evil ways. Ulahaskim b'libo, and to decide wholly in his heart. He's not going to transgress anymore. Rescind his evil thought, what he intended to do, and to cut off his evil deeds from his hand. Now, even if a person's been there before, he's transgressed, he said, I feel horrible, he makes up in his heart he's not going to do it again, and here he has done it again. Says, well, that only happened once. I feel horrible about it. I'm going to do tshuva. I'm never going to do it again. And then all of a sudden he does it again, and you're like, wow, I just started twice. So twice I said I'm not going to do it, and here I am doing it again. But I know it's not easy to do tshuva, but I feel horrible. I'm not going to do it again. All of a sudden, it happens again, and again, and again, and again. So after a certain amount of time, he's going to say, even if I feel bad about it, I have to be honest. I must not feel very bad about it because I felt bad about it in the past, and here I am again. I promised I wouldn't do it, and I've done it. So you know what? Forget it. Throw in the towel. It's all over. What good are my promises? What good are my promises? I promised I'm not going to do it, and I've done it again. You know what? It's probably better not to promise than to promise and transgress again. So forget it. I can't do it. No. What value is the tshuva? If in addition to regretting it, you have to also do azivat achet, which is to leave off from doing it, and I've done it again and again. When I say I'm not going to do it, I must not mean it. No, that's not the approach a person should take. A person is required to do tshuva, even if he's promised 15 times and he's done it again. Right now, the mitzvah of tshuva dictates that he feel remorse over having done it, and he makes a sincere promise and declaration he's not going to do it again, even if he knows he will do it again. But I don't want to do it again. That's tshuva. I regret it, feel bad about it. I don't want to do it again. I'm going to do everything I can to prevent doing it again. Even though I know I'm going to do it again. It still doesn't contradict tshuva. Because the tshuva is regretting it and not wanting to do it again. Wholeheartedly don't want to do it. I'm going to make every effort not to do it. Even if, like I said, I know that I probably will do it. But that doesn't mean that right now the tshuva is not sincere. If it's sincere, that's tshuva. Even if he ends up doing it again. Even if he knows at the time, they'll probably do it again. Problem would only be if he says, I'm sorry. When's the next time I'm going to do that? Yeah, in his heart, if he thinks about the next time he'll be able to do it, so that's not tshuva. Hashlishi, the third one. Hayagon. Yeah. Yeah, he might feel that he wants to.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he got so low down. He got to such a state.
Yeah.
He lost track of who he was.
Yeah, I guess you're right. He doesn't want to sin, but he wants to do this. So he'd rather it not be a sin. Yeah, of course. If you ask me, of course, I'd rather not transgress. But it's not my fault that this is prohibited. So he does it. So either she says it's not a sin, or it's not as bad as I'm told it is, or even if it's bad, I'll make up for it. I don't know. He justifies it because he doesn't. But a person's just not aware. My point is just to emphasize that even if a person's been here before and now he's here again, he should not be discouraged from doing tshuva by promising he's not going to do it again just because in the past he made the promise and it wasn't true because he ended up doing it again. That's not true. The promise was true. The promise was sincere. He regretted it and didn't want to do it again. The fact that he ultimately did it again doesn't mean that when he made that testimony it wasn't true. And therefore, even if he finds himself in this situation time and time again, he should not become callous to the power of tshuva. Rather, he should regret it and accept upon himself not to do it, even if he knows it's very likely that he'll end up doing it again. Still, right now, it's tshuva. Shevi Pol Tzaddik Makam. Yeah, what about 8th time?
The guy only says 7.
Yeah.
Somehow 7 is...
No, this is lav dafka.
Okay.
Yeah, 7, 8, 10, 14. Doesn't matter.
There's always 2 of them.
Yeah. And the pshat is that even a tzaddik will transgress as many as 7 times. Yeah, but the difference between the tzaddik and other people is that the other person doesn't get there, not because he doesn't transgress 7 times. It's because even before the 7th time he stops getting up. He gives up. The tzaddik doesn't transgress; he transgresses. The difference between the tzaddik and the others is that no matter how many times he falls, he keeps getting up again and again and again. Whereas the other takes the approach that I was just talking about, which is, I'm a loser. How many times can he be knocked out the 10 count? You know, I'm not. Yeah, get it for another round. I want to get out of the ring. Hashlishi, hayagon, remorse. Shiyanech b'ris alev, he should sigh with bitterness of heart. Kim odam hefsid dinner, koshelo, A person who's lost his dinner, which is a coin, yes, a gold coin from Talmudic times, it's very difficult for him. Sorry, I just haven't had lunch. V'im ebed osro, and if he lost his wealth, yes, abel v'libo mar bekirbo. Yes, he will be very upset, and his heart will be bitter inside because he's lost his wealth. V'chenim yivgehu shar tzoros. If other difficult things happen to him, yitztar meod. He'll be very upset. Kal v'chomer shitztar mishemorad ba'doinu gadol lishchizdar kodafanav alamor. So a person who has transgressed against his master, the great master, and has ruined his ways from before him, v'oso lo chesed, and God did for him this kindness, kol sheken shitztar, well, the master, kol sheken shitztar b'chol rega, all the more so he'll be very upset. V'da, shemedregos et tshuva v'ma'aloseho, lefi godol hamerus v'hatzar al avero she'osa. The degree of tshuva is a function of the degree of anguish he feels over what he's done wrong. So it's kind of like an arrow, right? The further you want it to project forward, the more you have to pull back. And the further you pull back, the greater the trajectory is going to be forward. So the more remorse a person feels in retracting from that avera, right, the more propensity that's going to give him to be propelled forward in order to serve Hashem properly. And therefore, a person should not refrain from feeling and even amplifying remorse over transgressions, because that counterforce is what's going to give him the ability to catapult that much more strongly forward to serve Hashem. Ki yatzar hu mitaras neshama elyona. The anguish over transgressions comes through the purity of the higher levels of soul. And God has mercy over a soul that's in anguish over transgression. Because the king will certainly be more upset about the members of his family. They're part of the royalty. More so than he'll have mercy on the poor folk in the outlying areas. So there, when the soul departs from its source on high because of transgression, then God will accept it much more quickly. So I think what he's getting at is, if a person, because of transgression, if a person's body is afflicted, that's going to kind of stir up less mercy in God's eyes than when the soul is afflicted. So that if a person is actually afflicting his soul out of remorse for transgression, because the soul is part of the actual palatial realm on high, when God sees that soul suffering, self-induced suffering because of tshuva, it's going to stir up more mercy in God's eyes than a person who's perhaps, let's say, suffering physically. Yeah. Why is the physical suffering coming? Because the person, let's say, transgressed. He didn't want to do tshuva, and he rebelled against Hashem consistently until his measure is filled, and punishment starts coming upon this person, and he suffers. Even if the person's unhappy about the suffering, it really wasn't something which was self-induced. It was in a way imposed upon the person to help catalyze the tshuva that he should have done and didn't. And God is ultimately going to be less merciful when things get to that stage than the self-remorse imposed upon a person where he feels inner turmoil and regret over the transgression that he did. And God is going to have much more mercy over such a person. Okay? So that's the third aspect of tshuva. That tshuva should be done in the realm of the soul, more so than taking place on the realm of the body, where the one is through tshuva and the other is really more of like affliction and punishment. If a person recognizes his transgression and the severity of it, and as a result of that he has anguish and suffers over that transgression, that's bringing affliction on the soul. So the suffering of the soul is viewed with much more mercy by God than the suffering of the body. The soul is being a member of the, like I said, the palatial realm of God. The palace. The palace. Palatial. Yeah. Okay. I think we're gonna have to stop here. Yeah. Yeah.
Getting through.
Okay.